explained on all of these webinars before, preceding webinars, including this one. All of them are being recorded. The YouTube videos have been uploaded, by the way, and I can share some links in the chat here. We're also going to email that out. We're still working on getting the actual FTA website webpage for the webinar series created. And like I said, we'll put the recordings up, or at least the links to the YouTube videos with the recordings, as well as the slides, so the specific PDF of the slides, which also have their own hyperlinks and web links to the resources that we reference within the slide decks. So I just want to say that, and when I get a chance, I'll drop in the recordings to the YouTube web links for the first 4, just so you have them now in case folks want to go back and see it now. And like I said, we'll email out the actual web page that will host the PDF slide decks. Okay, well, to kick things off, again, everyone, my name is Robert Hannafin. I've kind of been hosting and facilitating a few of these webinars. This is our 5th out of 6 of the 6-part webinar series, New Recipient Onboarding. Welcome all, good afternoon, good morning. So today we are starting the first of 2 systems access presentations. This one will be covering 3 different systems, if you will, or software platforms. FACES, ECHO, and NTD. These are all short for much longer acronyms. So this is going to be the 5th one, and then the 6th webinar, which is also another systems access webinar, is tomorrow, and it's going to cover trams. Just up front, again, this is being recorded, and our counsel wants us to provide this disclaimer that, again, this document presentation doesn't have the full force and effect of the law. It's not meant to bind the public in any way, and that obviously, we always, guide and tell our recipients to refer to the statutes and the laws themselves and all the applicable requirements and regulations. So just an upfront disclaimer. For today's agenda, like I said, we're going to be covering FACES, ECHO Web, and NTD. I'll explain what those are momentarily. Our 2 presenters today are Matt Long and Lucy Mears. Again, with each of these webinar series, I'm giving just the overview of FTA and the webinar series, the purpose of this series as part of this new recipient onboarding. I know it's repetitive for some of you all, but it's more or less the same spiel. And then we're going to have a Q&A session. And if you all remember, in terms of participating in this Zoom meeting, there is a Q&A tool at the very bottom of your screen, might be at the top of your screen, depends on where you place it within the Zoom panel. But there's a Q&A tool. Feel free to submit questions, and we will answer them during the Q&A session at the very end of the presentation, and we'll take note of when you ask that question, and we can always go back to slides. If there are any questions we aren't able to answer live, we can follow up with you separately. If it's a specific question, that's specific to your organization, it might be more appropriate for the region staff. If it's a broader question, we can try to track that down for you as well. So again, the Federal Transit Administration overview, right? FTA is an operating administration within the U.S. Department of Transportation. Our mission is improving America's communities through public transportation. And so we really look to you all as partners in improving these communities by investing and maintaining and operating transit services, really critical for mobility and equity. And so we look forward to this partnership. FTA is organized into 10 regions at the field office level, and there's obviously headquarters staff. This webinar series is really a collaboration between the different field offices, folks in the 10 regions, as well as subject matter experts in headquarters. And there's many offices that are involved in creating this curriculum and doing these presentations. As part of just, the new recipient onboarding, we already discussed some of the prerequisites to becoming a recipient. And then the other goal in kind of onboarding you, to becoming an FTA grant recipient is just to walk you through some of the systems access and grant-making processes, the systems we use, and then generally the ongoing reporting and compliance. This is meant to be an onboarding. These are high-level introductions to these topics. Each one of these topics that we've presented have their own series of webinars. You can definitely dive much deeper. Again, this is really meant to have an introduction to the general concepts, the law itself, and the processes. And each one of those obviously has a lot more reference material, regulations, guidance. And so part of this webinar series has been to provide that introduction and then also give you that reference material. We recognize that folks on this call represent a wide range of organizations who have a wide range of experience working with not just the federal government, but the Federal Transit Administration. Some folks are very fresh to being an FTA grant recipient. Some folks are maybe a sub-recipient to a recipient. There's many different kind of circumstances that you all will find yourselves in, and we fully recognize that there will be a spectrum of experience and knowledge. And so this webinar series really is meant to cater to that broad spectrum of experience. And you know, many of you are coming to us because you have a specific community project. Maybe you received a discretionary grant, or maybe as a result of the census, you are now becoming a direct recipient. There's a lot of different reasons why folks have become new recipients, and some of you have already engaged with FTA field offices and getting yourself set up, and some of you are going to soon. So again, this series really is to provide like the high-level overview and like that least common denominator of like the critical information you need to know to just get started. And again, this is a 6-part webinar series. We already went through the first 4. Today's is FACES, ECHO, Web, and NTD. Prerequisites, legal, financial, technical prerequisites for your organization to become an eligible grant recipient. We went over federal requirements, 2 specific ones, not all of them, there are more, but specifically the planning processes and environmental requirements. And those are specific to projects, right? Making sure that your project is eligible to receive FTA funds. And then lastly, the last 2 webinars, today's and tomorrow's, is going to be about systems access. And actually just a quick primer on systems access. So FTA basically has software, tools, if you will, or systems that we basically use to support the grant making and recipient reporting, right? There's a lot of information that needs to be exchanged between recipients and FTA as part of this grant making and reporting process, both in getting set up and just like the longer term monitoring and administration of grants. So this screenshot we have here is just showing the Appian platform. So this is an online platform, specifically called TrIAD. And it basically has a bunch of tiles, a bunch of different individual systems. This is just a screenshot of one potential user's view. Each of these systems may be used by different people within your organization. We fully recognize that some of the folks on this call might not even be the ones using FACES or NTD. So again, we're here to provide that overview of what are these systems, and then, you know, what is their purpose, you know, what do you do with them, and give you a little bit of a sneak preview of like navigating with them within them as well. So today we're focusing on FACES, which is user management. It helps you manage the users across all these other different systems. ECHO Web, and then NTD. Tomorrow is TRAMS. TRAMS on its own is a pretty big topic, so we decided to do that one separately. And to kick things off with FACES, like I said, this is kind of that overarching user management function or tool. I'm going to have Matt go ahead and start with that one, and he'll go into ECHO Web, and then Lucy Mears, who's on from Region 6, will talk about the National Transit Database and reporting. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and get started?
Sounds good. Thanks, Robert. So good afternoon and good morning, everybody. As Robert had said, my name is Matthew Long. I've been with FTA now for closing in on about 10 years, and I am the current federal lead for both the FACES system and the ECHO Web system. So I'm going to be talking to you today about these 2 products. Just, you know, getting it out of the way early, we know that government has a lot of acronyms. FACES stands for the FTA Access Control Entry System. And this is a product that frankly is going to be invisible to most of you. We'll talk about why in just a minute, but the important thing that we want to take away from this presentation are the steps that are required to get people into the TrIAD environment so that they can do all the other things. So if we click ahead here. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about a quick introduction to what FACES is, how it works. We're going to go through a little tiny piece of what user management means in the context of the TrIAD platform. We're going to talk a little bit about what a role is and what that means in the context of the TrIAD platform. And then we'll have a few screens just to walk you through some of the things that you might see in FACES if you end up having access. Right, so let's talk about just a quick introduction. So FACES is the gateway to TrIAD. TrIAD is the Transit Integrated Appian Development Platform. This is the building block on which all of these other systems are based. If you think about this like a house, the Appian platform is kind of the foundation. And all of the other systems, for this metaphor, are rooms in the house, places that you can go. FACES, in this case, is the doorway. This is how you get in. FACES provides unified user management for all applications under TrIAD. What that means is that you have to have roles assigned to you from the FACES app in order to get into any of the other applications. And it enables us to maintain and manage user access on the platform. It's a very important piece, again, that most of you will never see. So let's talk user management. This is kind of why most of you will never see this. We'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but FACES is really only accessible to people who have what are called user management roles or user management functions within the TrIAD environment. So every system or application on TrIAD has its own set of user roles and user access privileges. And the way that it works is that FACES goes through and assigns those roles and privileges to users in the system so that they can access those products. That leads us into FACES major functions, which are creating new user accounts, managing those accounts by adding, deleting, or copying user roles, authenticating users when they try to log into TrIAD, approving those role requests and from time to time security unlock requests, and then recertifying, deactivating, or reactivating users. We got a little typo there, but that's okay. So all of these are things that might happen to a user account over the course of a year. Creating a user account is pretty straightforward. This is, you have to have an account in TrIAD in order to access any of those systems, and FACES is how you get that account. You also have to have a login.gov account. We'll go into that a little bit more detail as well later on, particularly when we're talking about EchoWeb. But it is a very important piece of the project. So if you don't already have a login.gov account, I would really strongly recommend that you get one. The other pieces of this, when we're talking about managing user accounts, again, this comes back to the subject of roles. In order to access any of these systems, you need to have the role for that system, and every system has an individual set of roles that are associated with it. So TRAMS has different roles from EchoWeb, EchoWeb has different roles from NTD, so on and so forth. This is all due to something called role-based access, which is a federal security model. It's a cybersecurity model, really, that the federal government is obligated to follow. And what that means is that basically you should only have access to the pieces of the system that are relevant to your job. You might hear this described in other places as least privileged access. That's another common term that gets thrown around. And FACES is, again, how we manage that. So when we talk about these roles, this is how TrIAD categorizes you into the different systems that you can access. It defines who can get access to which pieces of data. It defines who can take specific actions. FACES itself actually has 3 big roles that are associated with it, because everything in TrIAD has roles. FACES is no exception. The 3 roles that show up in FACES are the user manager, the local security manager, and a global security manager. The reason why I say that FACES is going to be largely invisible to most of you most of the time is that unless you have the user manager role, you don't have access to FACES. The user manager role is very powerful. This is a role that exists at your organization level. So somebody from your organization can hold this role within FACES, and we strongly encourage you to have at least 1 or 2 user managers. The user manager is then able to assign roles, change roles, help stand up new users for other people within your organization. So again, user manager, organization level. The LSM, or local security manager, this is an FTA role, and this is going to be held by 1 or 2 or perhaps 3 people at the FTA regional level. So Robert earlier in the presentation had shown just a quick regional map of FTA. If you're at all curious about that, that's also available on Google. If you just type in FTA regions, it pops right up. And the LSMs exist at that level of organization. So an LSM is able to assign roles and responsibilities to anybody in TrIAD within their region. And then last, we have a global security manager. A global security manager is sort of an overarching user manager for each of the different TrIAD systems. And a GSM is able to assign roles and responsibilities to anybody, anywhere for that system. But again, that's an FTA only role. So the only role that's really applicable in most day-to-day operations from your perspective is going to be this user manager role. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what you might see as you're logging into the system. Robert had shown this before. This is the TrIAD homepage. So when you log in, you're going to see on this homepage all the different systems or applications that you personally can access. And FACES is how you get that access. So as long as you have a role assigned to you in any one of these systems from FACES, you will see the card or the tile pop up on the screen here. So let's say that you had access to TRAMS and access to NTD, you would only see TRAMS and NTD. So this page changes depending on who is actually viewing the product. Once you get into FACES, if you are a user manager, this is what you'll see. So this is the main page of FACES. This is our Manage Users tab. If you look at the blue bar there in the mid screen, that would be the top of the screen in Appian. And you can see that there are 4 tabs there that represent different things that you can do within the system. We're not going to go too deep into this, but we'll sort of skim over. This Manage User screen is, again, this is the landing page. This is really the main screen of FACES. This is where most of the work gets done. What you're seeing here is, first of all, a list of all the users within your organization. And you can filter that list based on all the criteria that you see there on the screen. Role categories, access control groups, those are mostly going to be pre-filled in for you guys because you're at the organization level. So your role category is always going to be an organization user. And your access control group, this just represents what region of the country you're in. So those for you are always going to be filled in. Same for the organization. You're only going to have access to those organizations for which you've been granted roles. So really the bits that are filterable on this screen from a user manager perspective are the role dropdown, the user type field, and the name type field, and then the various status buttons there. We have 3 big statuses in Appian. They are active, locked, and deactivated. Active means that you are able to do things within the platform commensurate with your roles. You have access, you're good to go. Locked means that you probably haven't been in the platform for about 60 days. The federal government has a mandate that anyone who does not access any of our systems for in a 60-day period should be locked out of that project or that system. That doesn't mean that you lose anything. You don't lose any of your roles. You don't lose any of your permissions, but you'd have to go through a security unlock cycle in order to regain access to any of these products. With FACES, that is typically as simple as answering security questions, and you're in and you're good to go. And then deactivated represents someone who has been removed from all systems in the platform. So the TrIAD system tracks that username, but if you've been deactivated, that simply means that you don't have any roles associated with you. So you can't do anything, in other words. At the top right of the screen, you'll see the 2 main buttons that a user manager would use in FACES, which are create new user, or in some cases, create multiple users. And clicking that would take you down that path. ahead here. Oops, too far. Back one. There we go. Okay, moving on our tabs, we're now looking at this Actions tab. Again, we're not going to go too deep into this. This is just a quick highlight of things that a user manager might be able to see. So here, again, we've got the option to create and manage users. We've got an option to create multiple users. There's an option to what's called recertify a user. This is an important point because this affects everybody. Once every year, again, by federal cybersecurity mandate, all federal systems are required to do what's called recertification. And that means that somebody is looking through the whole product and assessing whether or not every single user who has access to the federal system needs to be there and checking their access level to make sure that they have the correct roles and responsibilities for what they need to do. FTA does this in the October to January timeframe. So, Q4 calendar year, starting Q1 calendar year. And that will happen to everybody who's in the system. Again, if you are a user manager, you have specific tasks associated with that. If you're a user manager, it is your job to go into your organization and recertify all of the people that you know that need to be there. That's what that button does. We have a button there for reviewing unlock requests. From time to time, if you're a user manager, people may not be able to unlock their account. Maybe they forgot their security question. Maybe there was another event that came up where you needed to lock them for some specific reason, in which case they wouldn't have access to their security questions. And that would be how you as a user manager would unlock those users. And then last, we've got a button for managing role documentation. There are some roles within the, specifically within TRAMs, that require what's called a justification document. And this is simply a form that your agency fills out to certify basically that a particular person has a particular right to hold a particular role within TRAMs. So that's really only applicable in a few circumstances, but that's how a user manager would manage it. Let's see if the button will work here. This is probably the most common thing that a user manager is going to do in the system, is to help people with unlock requests. So we wanted to highlight this one specifically. This is what that would look like. So if you were a user and you're coming into the system and for whatever reason you can't get in, these are the screens that you would need to go through. So there's an unlock my account tile that would show up if you were locked out. All you would need to do is click that. You get this unlock account screen that pops up that basically says send a request to unlock your account and you can move forward. Neela, you have your hand up? Okay, never mind. We'll move on. Coming back to our Actions tab, we're looking at reports here. There's only a couple of reports that a user manager is really ever going to need. One of them is this user details report. That's just a full list of all the people in your organization. The other one is a user deactivation history report. And all that is a report that will show you all the people in your organization that have been deactivated over a given period of time. Both of those are useful for different reasons as the years go on. Those are the most common things that we see requested. Again, we're not going to go too deep there. And last but not least, we have our Help tab. This is common to all of the Appian products. There's always a Help Center option. And in that Help Center, that's where you would go to find things like the user manual, FAQ documentation, and then sort of broad categories that different systems label slightly differently, that sort of third tile there where it says system information. That's an area where different systems might upload products like webinars or training presentations, other things that might be useful for people, but don't neatly fit under the other two categories. This is also a location where you can go to find the address for the IT help desk. So if you see technical IT issues there, it's got the help desk business hours and their email address. That is FTA's primary portal for requesting help for any given system. So if you do have any problems, that's where you go. Click that link, that pops up a request to our help desk, and those folks are very knowledgeable and can typically route you wherever you need to go. Last but not least, we've got some information here about just general Faces stuff that people might need. So the Faces user guide is available online. I've given the link here, but if you're not able to copy all that down in the space of the next 5 or 10 seconds, I will say again that this is available on Google or a search engine of your choice. All you have to do is type in FACES user guide and it will pop right up. So that's our most recent user guide. Again, it's available for public download. If FACES is something that you think you might need to use because you might need to be a user manager for your organization, I would really strongly suggest giving that a look. Preferably around bedtime because it's a bit of a read. It will reliably put you to sleep, but it has everything in there that you might need to know. And last but not least, we have another link to the help desk here. That's FACES in a nutshell. So again, when we talk FACES, I want you all to think user management. That's really all that FACES does. For most of you, this is going to be a non-issue. For a few of you, it's going to be a very important part of your interactions with FTA. That's going to take us over to EchoWeb. I'm going to pause here once again. If you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat. We're going to have time at the end of the presentations here to go through those. And you've got a lot of knowledgeable people on the phone here today from FTA, so we do strongly encourage you to ask any question that occurs to you. So moving on, we're going to talk about EchoWeb. ECHO stands for the Electronic Clearinghouse Operation because the federal government did not invent acronyms, but we have perfected them. ECHO is an app that we use to process payment requests. So this is a very, very important part of doing business with FTA. Once you've received a grant, once you have money allocated to that grant, EchoWeb is where you go to initiate a drawdown against those funds. Talking about ECHO, we're going to go through, again, some just general background, quick overview of what the system is, how it works, talk about some prerequisites for getting access, talk about what modules are available in the system, what it can do, talk about some system roles, and then again, we'll do a real quick walkthrough through the primary EchoWeb screens, just so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so again, EchoWeb is our primary application that we would use, or that you would use rather, to request payments against a grant award that your organization has received. There are 2 collection periods every day where FTA gets all those payment requests and bundles them up and sends them on up the chain to various other federal systems that actually end up documenting and processing all of those. The next system in line is what we call the financial management system. You'll need to deal with them at a later point in order to set up some of your banking information. But that's probably a later presentation. So again, twice a day, EchoWeb is going to bundle up all of those payment requests. It sends them on to FMS. Those times are 7:50 a.m. and 1:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Any payment request that comes in before those times is going to be included as part of that bundle. And then again, that goes on up the chain through to the US Treasury. And it typically takes between 2 days, maybe a week at the outside to process most payment requests. So that's our usual expectation for how long it would take for you to initiate a payment request and then receive money in your account. So let's talk about some prerequisites for using EchoWeb. We touched on login.gov earlier. Again, login.gov is a very, very important service. As time goes on, more and more of the federal government is being pushed towards using login.gov as our primary portal to log in. The way that it works for us is that clicking on the link that takes you to EchoWeb will automatically route you to login.gov. You'll enter your information in login.gov, and then you'll get access to the TrIAD environment. And if you have access to EchoWeb, you will again see your EchoWeb tile pop up on the main screen. Access to EchoWeb means that you must also have an active FTA FACES user account with an active EchoWeb role that is associated with your organization. So those 3 points, sort of the right half of this chart, those are all taken care of when somebody sets you up as a new user within TrIAD. They'll give you access to the various systems that you need. So again, that's mostly invisible from the average user's side and their perspective. The big things here, you need to make sure that you have a login.gov account that is in good standing, and you need to make sure that you have a FACES account that is in good standing. If you have those 2 things, you can get access to EchoWeb. So we're going to just real quick run through what EchoWeb does. It has 4 main modules that are part of the system. One is payment management. This is where you would go to submit payment requests, to modify or cancel those requests, or to view the status of those requests through the different federal systems and to view your account balance. That's all in payment management. When we talk about task management, this is very simple. We're just going to glance over it. This simply means that Appian saves stuff as you go through the various screens to submit a payment request. So if you lose internet access, if you have to go away from your computer, if you get an emergency email that you have to respond to, whatever, if you close the tab, basically Appian saves it and it recognizes where you were when you left. When we talk about account management for Echo Web, this is mostly focusing on, again, your organization. So your organization must have an active SAM.gov account in order to do pretty much anything with federal grant making, and FTA is no exception. One of the things that Echo Web does is it goes out to SAM.gov, which is the central repository for all grant making information related to grant recipient organizations, which is to say you guys, for the federal government. It's a source of truth. Echo Web goes out to SAM.gov and it pulls certain information into the system. So if you don't have a valid SAM.gov account, or if something is wrong with your SAM.gov account, Echo Web will start throwing up flags to say, hey, this might not be accurate. And you can view some of that information from account management. You can also view all of the users within your organization who have access to Echo Web from account management. So it's a useful little click to go over there and just make sure that everything is still functional. And lastly, we have help management. This is, again, the exact same help page that we just saw for FACES, pretty much, where it's just policy, system-related documents, training documents, FAQs, user guides, that sort of thing. So let's talk about Echo Web roles. We mentioned roles talking about FACES. This is the practical application. Echo Web has 4 primary roles, and a user must have at least one of these roles to access the Echo Web environment. Some of these you can hold concurrently. So first of all, we have a user manager. We've already talked about what the user manager does. This is sort of the practical application. If you have an Echo Web user manager role, that means that you can manage users for your organization within Echo Web. You will be responsible for ensuring recertification of those users within Echo Web. And you also get an organization level view so that you can see all the different people who have access to Echo Web for your group. The next one on the list, the approving official. This is essentially a double check role. The federal government is increasingly moving towards a philosophy of multi-factor authentication in all things. Multi-factor authentication just means there's multiple checks on actions that take place for different big events. Submitting a payment request is a big event. So an approving official is a role that every organization must have within Echo Web in order to submit payment requests at all. But all the approving official does currently is receive an email. So an approving official gets an email that says, hey, your organization just sent in a payment request. Please make sure that's okay. That's essentially all that role does. The read-only role, this is a role that's available for folks within your organization that just need to see stuff. They don't necessarily need to put in payment requests. They don't need to be an approving official. They just need to have a view. That's what read-only is for. And last but not least, we have the grantee role. And this is kind of the bread and butter role of Echo Web. This is the one that is actually able to submit a payment request and then modify, cancel, or do other things with that request. So to recap, every organization is strongly encouraged to have a user manager for Echo Web. Every organization must have an approving official and a grantee role assigned to 2 different people in order to submit a payment request. And you can have as many read-only users as you like. You can't mix and match read-only with approving official or grantee, but you can with user manager. Similarly, you can't mix and match approving official and grantee roles. That doesn't work, but you can have a user manager who is also an approving official or a user manager who is also a grantee. It gets a little bit complicated, but the best way to look at it is that the 3 roles on the right are mutually exclusive. So moving on, we're just going to take a quick look through what some of the primary Echo Web screens look like. This again is the TrIAD homepage. This is the screen that you would see if you just had access to Echo Web. So if that's the only system that you had access to in TrIAD, this is what it would look like when you logged in. And again, you would just click that little Echo Web tile to get access to the product. Once you're in Echo Web, the main landing page is the payment request page, which makes sense because that's what most people are going to be doing within Echo Web. So on this screen, on the right hand, you can see that payment request button. Clicking that is how you would put in a payment request. We'll go over at a high level what that looks like in just a moment. On this main screen, you can also see every payment request that your organization has submitted for all time. So if you are brand new to FTA, if you're just now doing business with us, those payment requests are going to be blank. But as soon as you put in your first one, it will populate on that list, and then subsequently it will just continue going. So from here, you can look at all the past payment requests, you can filter them, you can sort them, you can see how much they were for, you can see whether they completed correctly or if they did not. So very useful information on this screen. Let's look at the payment request form really quick. Again, this is a high-level overview. We've got two basic screens here that you'll need to go through when you submit a payment request. This first screen is mostly summary information. There's a number there that you will be assigned called an ECN, or an Echo Control Number. And ECN is assigned to your organization by FTA when your grant is approved. So this is a number that will pre-populate in the system for you. You won't have to type it in. The grant number is the number of your actual grant, and a project number represents a particular project that might be under that grant. So depending on what type of grant you have multiple projects. Depending on how long your organization has done business with FTA, you might have multiple grants. So that's where you would select that. Last but not least, if we look at the bottom corner of that top screen where it says payment request or request payment for, there are two options, a Teams grant and a TRAMS grant. A team grant represents an older grant making product that FTA used many years ago. It is no longer in service. None of you will be receiving team grants. So only TRAMS grants will be available for most of you, for all of you, I would think. If we look at the bottom part of the screen, this is what the next screen in the payment request process looks like. So here you can select your PO number, your scope code, and your scope suffix. These are all additional grant making designators. As you go through the grant making process, various of those will be explained to you or will be populated for you. And again, the system is pulling all this information in. You just have to hit the drop-down button there and select off the list which one of these you want to draw against. As soon as you have entered the PO number, scope code, and scope suffix, the available balance for that particular grant will populate, and it'll show up under the available balance column. And then all you have to do is enter the amount that you would like to request. Pretty simple. And then there's the submit button. You hit that, you're good to go. Moving back to our main screen, we're just going to do, again, a quick look at account management. Towards the middle of the page, if you see the highlighted orange box, you'll see that account management is broken out into users versus recipients. What this means is that if you're looking at this, you'll see all the users from your organization. And if you are belonging to multiple organizations for any particular reason, if you have a role with two different organizations that have grants with FTA, those will populate under the recipients tab. For most of you, we're not really going too deep into that because most of you, again, are just going to have the one. But this is a good screen, a good series of screens to look at every once in a while, just to make sure everything is still correct. So on the user side, you do want to do fairly regular reviews to make sure that the people who have access to Echo Web are still the people you want to have access to Echo Web. And on the recipients tab, you do want to look at that from time to time just to make sure that all of your organization's information is still being reflected correctly. We're going to skip over my tasks because there's not much to it. My tasks, again, would just show if you had an outstanding payment request that had not been completed. So We're landing on the help tab here. Again, this is showing the 3 basic categories, which is FAQs, user manual, and then a sort of a catch-all bucket for other stuff. In EchoWeb, this is called user uploaded documents, and that can include things such as training presentations, webinar recordings, other things that might be popping up that you would find useful. And once again, some additional information here. The EchoWeb user guide is also publicly accessible. It is available from that link. If you do not have time to copy down that link, all you have to do again is go to the search engine of your choice, type in EchoWeb user guide, and it will pop right up. And once again, if you do need any assistance with the EchoWeb product, we do ask that you contact the IT help desk at fta.it-helpdesk@dot.gov. From here, I'm going to turn it over to Lucy. So thank you very much, and I will see you all in the comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lucy Mears. I'm a transportation program specialist here in FTA's Region 6 office in Fort Worth. Today, I will give an introduction to the National Transit Database NTD system for new FTA recipients. This overview presentation will include the National Transit Database, why reporting is important, types of NTD reporters, and NTD resources available. So we'll begin here. The National Transit Database is a system on the Appian platform. As Matt mentioned in the FACES overview, if an organization user has established user roles for the NTD application, the user will have this NTD tile on the Appian TrIAD platform. There's usually one to two users with the NTD reporter role per recipient organization. What is the National Transit Database, NTD? The National Transit Database is the primary source of information and statistics on the transit systems in the United States. The NTD collects, validates, and publishes information and statistics on transit systems. NTD reporting was established by Congress to collect financial, operating, and asset information on transit agencies. Congress requires the Federal Transit Administration, FTA, to collect financial and service information annually from public transportation agencies that benefit from FTA awards. Using data reported to NTD, Congress has apportioned billions of dollars in funding annually since the early 1980s. Why is NTD reporting important? In the interest of being a nationwide program, Federal Transit Administration has a mandate to establish uniform and consistent reporting requirements. Congress requires collection of financial and service information annually from beneficiaries of FTA grants. Data reported to the NTD is used to apportion funds through programs such as Urbanized Area Formula Grants, Section 5307, Formula Grants for Rural Areas, Section 5311, Transit Safety and Oversight Grants, Section 5329, and State of Good Repair Grants, Section 5337. Data reported to the NTD provides information on which to base public transportation service planning, data tables for the apportionment of formula funds, transit agency peer comparison, research and analysis, including condition and performance reports, safety reports, and transit asset management performance targets. Who is required to report to NTD? Congress requires agencies to report to NTD if they receive or benefit from urbanized area formula grants, are formula grants for rural areas. In addition, all recipients and subrecipients of Chapter 53 funds that own, operate, or manage public transportation capital assets are required to develop and implement a transit asset management plan, TAM. The two main or most popular reporting types are full and reduced reporting. Let's review some of the requirements for a full reporter. Full reporters are urbanized reporters. They have a monthly and annual reporting requirement. Full reporters are in urbanized areas and have 30 or more buses or fixed guideway rail. This is the largest group of NTD reporters. Full reporters report monthly ridership by mode, both service supplied and service consumed. Safety and security event information, including fatalities, serious injuries, derailments, rail collisions, and property damage. All information relating to safe transit asset inventory and condition assessment conducted by the recipient. Any data on assaults on transit workers of the recipients and any data on fatalities that result from an impact with the bus. Annually, full reporters reports to NTD includes basic information and certifications, service levels, finances, capital assets, and urban area allocation. The next group of reporters is rural, tribal, and asset-only reporters. These reporters are considered to be reduced reporters. Reduced reporters have special rural reporting requirements. Each reporter under this section shall submit an annual report containing information on capital, investment, operations, and service provided with funds received under this section, including total annual revenue, sources of revenue, total annual operating costs, total annual capital costs, fleet size, types, and related facilities, vehicle revenue miles, and ridership. Reduced reporters report sources of funds, capital and operating, annual service data, total fatalities, injuries, incidents, facility and service vehicle inventories. Lastly, there is a small group of asset-only reporters, Section 5310 sub-recipients that neither receive Section 5307 nor Section 5311 funds, only report vehicle and facility inventories. Generally, asset-only reporters are handled by the state DOT or a group plan sponsor. Where can you find additional information on NTD? The NTD Help Center. Here you can find more information about the program, updates and changes to collection requirements, and answers to frequently asked questions. More importantly, this is where you can access NTD data reports, transit agency profiles, and national transit summaries and trends. The reference materials on the NTD website include policy manuals, information about training and conferences, snapshots of reporting forms, and an NTD glossary. Training courses on urban and rural modules, as well as new courses for NTD tribal reporters and on safety and security requirements are provided by the National Transit Institute. The NTD program support team offers periodic webinars to cover updates, reporting topics, and information for specific reporting types. Finally, this bottom table lists 3 main places beyond your assigned NTD analyst to get help with policy questions, how to use the reporting system, and other program-related questions. This concludes my introduction to the National Transit Database, NTD. I will now turn the webinar back over to Robert for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lucy. Really appreciate it. Great presentation. Likewise, Matt. Okay, so we did have a few questions, and if you all could also bear with me, we do have the same two poll questions as well. So as far as questions from the audience, I guess we'll just go in order of the presentation. So starting with you, Matt. Okay, so what do I need to do to get access to Faces?
Okay, well, this is a straightforward one. So again, the only people who can get access to Faces are those who have a user management role. So if you are trying to become a user manager, you would need to reach out to your FTA regional office and ask for their LSM. And they can get you set up. It typically takes, maybe a few minutes once they have it in queue to get that done. So if you don't hear back from them within, let's just say, a day, do feel free to reach out to the help desk.
Great. Okay, and then a follow-up to that question is, so for Faces user management, do the users actually have to be part of the recipient organization, or can they work for another company or organization? This is, and I'm going to actually say, answer that for Faces specifically, and then maybe for Echo, if that's a separate answer, if you could clarify.
Sure, yeah. So for both of those systems, we would really strongly prefer that the user manager be a member of the organization. It is going to help you immeasurably to have that set up that way. The point of a user manager is to ensure that everybody who has access to the product actually needs to be there. And if you're not a member of the organization, first of all, I don't think that's allowed under FTA security policy, but secondly, you're not going to have that local level knowledge, or at least not as good of local level knowledge. So again, we would definitely answer that a UM should be a member or an employee of the organization that they are representing.
Great, thank you. Let's see. If we identified a user manager when we submitted the initial access forms, and that person does not have user manager access, what would we need to do? So this seems like they requested access on behalf of someone to be user manager, and they have yet to receive it.
Right.
Who do we need to talk to? Who do you go to?
Definitely an IT help desk ticket. So if you get that into the IT help desk group, that team knows all of the LSMs for the different regions, and they can reach out to the appropriate person, make sure that your form was received, make sure that it's being acted on. So yeah, definitely IT help desk.
And I just answered this question, by the way. Will the presentation be provided? Yes. So we will provide a PDF version of this, and they'll have like the active URL web links, so you can just click on them and go to the resources, and you'll see like the email addresses and the contact information. So just wanted to reiterate that. So as a follow-up to who can be a user, and not necessarily a user manager, just to confirm, individuals who are not in that recipient organization can still have some type of role in say the system, but it's strongly preferred or required for user management specifically, right? So other people and other companies could potentially have one of these sub roles, if you will.
But potentially depending on the role. So some of our systems might have specific role categories where you would, be better inclined to have somebody external to your organization holding a role for you. But I would really strongly recommend against that, just as a general rule. For security purposes, if nothing else, you should keep those roles internal to your organization in any case where it is not specifically specified that it can be or should be somebody external to your organization. So, yeah.
Ready. At what point in the process should we request access to faces?
As soon as you need to get access to any FTA system. So if you are pushing a grant through our discretionary grant system, let's say, you will need to get access to faces. If you were involved in a formula grant or a discretionary grant that's being put through TRAMs, you will need to get access to TRAMs. In general, an FTA person will probably be reaching out to let you know if you need to get access to particular systems. But I would say the general rule is anytime that you need to do something with that particular process, you're going to need access to that FTA system.
Going through a few more. Lucy, this one's for you. It's an NTD question. Okay, so when is a new recipient assigned an NTD analyst? Like, when does the reporting process start?
Okay, great. So the reporting process starts when the recipient makes a request to the NTD website, to the help desk, ntdhelp@dot.gov. Once you make that request to the website, you will be assigned the FTA ID number, and then you will be assigned the FTA NTD analyst. The process usually takes less than a week. In some cases, if the system is down, it may take longer, but we strive to get the analyst assigned within a week.
And then another NTD question. When is the first NTD report required for new recipients who receive the competitive award?
Okay, so I also provide a link to the NTD policy manual in the chat for questions of these, but pretty much the report is due based on the recipient's fiscal year end date. Whether it's fiscal year or calendar year, it depends on the reporter. The annual report is submitted 4 months after the agency fiscal year end.
Great, that's really helpful. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break to do the polls because I don't see questions right now. Well, one more question actually. So hang in there, but I'm going to launch this poll, and if you all could answer, and if there are any FTA people on the call, please refrain from responding. Again, these are just to better understand whether the curriculum, the content, like the breadth of the topics themselves were covered adequately, you know, for this introduction onboarding webinar. Again, these are a few of the systems that you will become familiar with, and I highly recommend, and again, we are fully cognizant of the fact that maybe you will not be the person in charge of FACES user management or accessing or reporting out on NTD, but I would definitely recommend, you know, sharing the links to these webinars and the slide decks to any colleagues that may be tasked with doing so. And actually, on that note, I did promise to add the YouTube links, so let me throw that into the chat, and we can send them after. Again, we're trying to get these uploaded to the FTA website, which is a process in of itself. Okay, so I am going to send. Oh, nope, it's not sending. Okay. Give me one quick second, and okay, I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to ask one more question, and in the interim, I will find the links and I'll post them in the chat. So, okay, so last question for you, Lucy, is what is the time frame? What is the time frame for reporting data to be reflected in an apportionment? For example, is the information reported in the 2023 NTD report reflected in the recipient's FY24 formula apportionment?
So the information reported in the years reported, it's 2 years prior. So for instance, NTD data that was reported in FY22 is used for the FY24 apportionment or formula. So it's a 2-year offset based on when your information was reported to NTD, depending on the program as well. And again, more information on this is also in the policy manual. I dropped it in the chat if you can see it, Robert.
Oh, yep. Thanks for doing that.
Okay, good.
Okay, folks. So I am going to just slowly add in these web links. And again, these are for the 4 preceding webinars, and these are the recordings themselves. We will send out the actual web page, the FTA website web page, in which we will include these links on that web page, as well as PDF copies of the slide deck. So I'm just going to do this for now, in case you all want to access them. I posted the environmental planning processes YouTube video web link, the planning processes requirements YouTube video web link, typing in legal capacity civil rights, momentarily getting that for you. And then lastly, financial technical. Lesson learned, apparently you can't just copy and paste things into Zoom because it's going to copy over well. One last question, actually, tossing it back to you, Matt. So for Echo Web, can anyone from my agency send in a payment request?
Great question. The answer is no. Only users who have the grantee role can send in a payment request. Now, within your agency, you could assign that role to whoever you deem has authorization. However, only 2 individuals from your organization can hold a grantee role at any given time within Echo Web. So you've got 2 folks within your group. They have to have that role in order to submit payments, and only 2 people can be assigned, maximum of 2.
Got it. Great question. Okay, well, I think that is everything. I don't see any other questions. I believe we've answered all of them. Thanks all for being engaged and posing really good questions. These are really kind of critical topics. As part of this process, right? In addition to meeting these prerequisites for organization, to be an FTA grant recipient, and then complying with the relevant federal requirements, environmental planning, et cetera, specific to the projects. They're also the mechanics of just accessing these systems in order to submit for a grant and request payment for a grant, and then also to report out on, necessary, NTD reporting requirements. And so there are a bunch of different systems. Again, tomorrow, we are going to have another systems overview, and that is for TRAMS. Highly recommend joining that one. TRAMS is another very critical tool that your organization will be working with in a few different ways. And so we're going to give an overview, a high-level overview of TRAMS. And again, everything will be recorded and posted online, hopefully soon. So thank you all for your time. I am going to end it, and have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.